Okay, so meron dalawang sample problems, klase ng sample problems na ipapakita sa module na to. First one is finding acceleration given individual forces. So, bibigay sa iyo yung free body diagram, given na yung mga values ng iba't ibang forces, hanapin mo yung acceleration using the formula A equals F net divided by the mass. Before we start, remember these equations na binigay sa iyo last time. First one is the gravitational force, equal yan sa mass times the acceleration due to gravity. Second one is the frictional force, equivalent yan sa coefficient of friction times the normal force. Normal force sa ating mga problem, magiging equivalent siya sa gravitational force kasi siya naman ay nakapatong sa isang surface na horizontal. And then, of course, the equation from the Newton's second law of motion, acceleration equals net force divided by the mass. So, take note of this kasi gagamitin mo yan sa mga computation. So, let's take a look at problem number 1. Dito sa problem number 1, given ka ng applied force, frictional force, gravitational force, but hindi given sa'yo yung normal force. Hindi din given sa'yo yung FMA. So, meron ng step dito, pero wag muna natin siyang pansinin. Magkaroon tayo ng konting analysis. So, ano yung pwede kong masolve muna dito sa problem na to? Pwede kong masolve muna yung normal force, no? Kasi yung normal force, nakabase siya doon sa gravitational force. And dahil equal yung dalawa, yung normal force and gravitational force, sure ako na hindi nagmo-move yung object along the y-axis. Pero kung titignan ko yung dalawang forces along the x-axis, kita ko na meron silang difference. So for sure, makakakuha ako dyan ng net force na hindi equal sa 0. Hindi equal to 0 yung aking net force dito. So actually, pwede kong unahin yung normal force, tapos yung net force, o pwede ko din namang baliktarin. Unahin ko muna yung net force, tapos yung normal force yung sasolve ko. Pero sundin na natin yung sequence na nakalagay dyan. So, since object is in a horizontal surface, on a horizontal surface, Fg equals Fn. So, yung Fg ko ay 80 newtons. Okay? Pangalawa, I will expect na mag-move yung object sa x-axis rather. Kasi may difference yung applied force. Applied force is positive kasi to the right. Negative yung frictional force kasi to the left siya. So, if I will get the subtraction, 50 newtons divided by 10 newtons. So, syempre, makakuha ko ng 40 newtons. Positive yan, so to the right, yung iyong F net. 40 newtons. So, check. Now, how will I get the mass? Paano kaya kunin yung mass? Syempre, pwede kong gamitin yung formula ng gravitational force. Okay? So, given, hanapin ko yung mass, so divide ko yung acceleration due to gravity para makancel mo yun. So, meron ka na lang mass equals Fg, which is 80 newtons divided by acceleration due to gravity, which is 9.8 meter per second squared. Let me pause this first. Okay, 80 divided 9.8 equals 8.16 kilograms. So that's our mass. And then finally, we're going to solve for the acceleration using the formula A equals F net over m. So our net force is 40 newtons divided by the mass, which is 8.16 kilogram. So 40 divided by 8.16 is 4.9. 4.90 meter per second squared. That's our acceleration. So, lagay lang natin dito, no, para mas maganda. 8.16 kilogram and 4.9 meter per second squared. Let's go to the next example, problem number 2. So, in this problem, same pa rin yung mga given, no? Applied force, frictional force, gravitational force. Pero right now, meron kang coefficient of friction na binigay sa'yo. So, again, dahil yung object ay resting on a horizontal surface, you will expect that the gravitational force is equal to the normal force. So, dahil 100 newtons yon, gravitational, 100 newtons in yung normal force. So, 100 newtons. Now, we can also solve for the net force. Net force equals applied force ay positive since siya ay papunta sa kanan, yung direction ng arrow ng applied force ay papunta sa kanan, and then minus the frictional force ay negative since yung direction ng arrow ay papunta sa kaliwa. So 20 newtons divided by 10 newtons is 10 newton. So we solve for the net force. Actually, pwede mo unahin muna yung net force tapos normal force. Pero yung pangatlo, frictional force, kailangan mo munang masolve yung normal force bago yung frictional force. Kasi remember, di ba, yung formula natin for the frictional force is coefficient of friction times the normal force. So dapat may value ka muna ng normal force. So frictional force is equivalent to 10 newtons. Sorry, we are actually solving for the coefficient of friction. Frictional force is 10 newton, coefficient is the unknown, normal force is 100 newton. So, para makuha mo yung coefficient, i-divide mo to sa 100 newtons para ma-cancel out yung 100 newtons. So, 10 divided 100 will be equal to 0.10. That's the value of the coefficient. No units, yung coefficient of friction. Number 4, we can solve for the mass using the formula Fg equals m times g. Fg is 100 newtons equals mass is the unknown. Gravitational acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meter per second squared. Divide this by 9.8 meter per second squared. 9.8 meter per second squared. Cancel out. 100 newtons divided by 9.8 is equivalent to 10.20 kilogram. Okay. Nakalimutan pa natin isulat yung net force. So, last, you get the acceleration. May space pa. So, acceleration is F net divided by mass. So, F net is 10 newton, mass is 10.20 kilograms. Your acceleration should be 10 divided by 10.20, 0.98 meter per second squared. Okay.